Well, hey everyone. I am so excited about today's guest. I want to acknowledge you, whether you're here on YouTube or you're listening on iTunes or wherever you are. I want to welcome you officially to the Susan Sly Project. And this show is really about helping you succeed in business, whether you are a teacher doing a side hustle or you've decided to do a startup. I love to bring guests that are going to empower you and give you the skills, not just the motivation to succeed in business as an entrepreneur. And my guest today is 19 years old now. He's been featured in Entrepreneur Magazine. He has a company that employs 70 people, does over $2 million a year, started a brand new venture. And I have to say, someone I deeply admire. He's always so energetic. He literally is in a hallway right now. So if you're watching this live, you can see him in a hallway. It's kind of cool. Anyway, Brennan Agranoff, thanks for being here, Brennan.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, okay, let's talk about the new venture. I'm super excited as a product recipient. Love it. Can you tell everyone about it?
Yeah, so basically Mother's Day came around this year. And like in the past, I had basically printed socks and like that was my thing. But what we actually had going for us was like the manufacturing processes and everything behind it. And so I was like, okay, what's something that like might actually be a good product fit for Mother's Day that's like a gifty item, and something that I hadn't really seen before. And so I tested a whole bunch of different stuff. But I ended up coming across like oven mitts, which sounds really random, but it was just a matter of like testing it against the market and being like, hey, does this work? Does it not work? So we ended up printing custom oven mitts. So basically you upload a picture of your face or whatever, your dog, cat, whatever it may be, and then we put it on like a different background. So we've got like Cash or Galaxy or a bunch of your face, or some of them now say like, we did some for Father's Day that say like #1 dad. So we basically like do these customized oven mitts is the new thing.
And like, seriously, Mother's Day wasn't that long ago, depending on when someone's listening to this. So like, just to give everyone perspective, we are, literally just, in and around 4 or 5 weeks outside of Mother's Day. So you get this idea before Mother's Day, like not very long, you launch on Mother's Day. Let's talk about the process of that, because most people procrastinate on launching a business for years, let alone doing it in a few weeks.
Yeah, well, so I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, one of my strong suits is not planning ahead necessarily. And so like I knew all year, I was like, I should really come up with some sort of product that's like that aimed towards Mother's Day. Um, Reality was I didn't actually end up doing anything about it until about a month out. And what happened was I saw that they were selling, because I did everything with digital mock-ups. I didn't have any on hand yet actually. And I was like, oh, we'll see if we can sell any. So I think I ended up selling about 300 of them before we'd ever like touched one of these things. Um, and that was just like because I had confidence in the system behind what I do, and that the people I work with are good enough to be able to figure out how to make them and that and so on. But basically, we ended up selling like 300 of these, and then we're like, okay, crap, we should probably figure out how to make these. So we scavenged all over the U.S. to find all the white oven mitts that we could, because they're like really specific type of oven mitts that you need. And we basically started figuring out how to print them. But in terms of like starting it, it was literally, and this is just from like past experience that I've been able to figure this out, but like you don't need a super crazy in-depth plan for everything. You kind of just like toss something up, see if it works, and like the little stuff that is working, you like keep digging or hitting on over and over and over again and keep digging deeper in, and the stuff that doesn't work, you kind of pass up on and move on. And that was sort of how I got to the oven mitts in the first place, because like I was gonna try like cooking boards and all sorts of other stuff, but like the oven mitts just like it seemed like the most best fit for the market, and so I kind of like just listened to the numbers and ran with it, and then ended up selling them. And then again, you kind of just troubleshoot as you go.
It fascinates me because I meet a lot of people who are like, I'm thinking of starting a business, and I'll see them a year later. They're like, I'm thinking of starting a business. And that's not you. You get an idea and you take action on it. Like, would you say that's always been the case for you? And do you act on every idea you have, or do you just immediately say that one isn't going to be a winner?
No, so I actually have a list that I literally keep in like my email that is just like business ideas, and some of them are so outrageous that like you'll be like, that's just dumb. And I don't like, there's so many of them, I don't have time to try all of them. So I kind of pick off what I find most interesting or what I think has the most potential and kind of test them on the side. Because reality is you kind of always have to be testing. Otherwise you're falling behind. Like if you're not testing stuff, then someone else is. And so I'm basically always testing stuff. And like I sell the socks and the mitts and the products, like that's my main company. But on the side, like I'm always testing stuff just because number one, it keeps me interested and keeps me learning. And number two, like it's growth. So
Mhm. So you have an email of business ideas. Do you have a separate email where you email yourself? Because I know
no,
some people do. Like,
yeah, no, I figured out if you because like I figured if you add like a dot into a Gmail address, like for whatever reason, it sends a if you I have a phone number, like a contact on my phone. It's called Brennan's inbox, and so anytime I need like a reminder or an idea or whatever, I just send it. I text it to myself, and it shows up on my email, and then I go through and like sort it later. So I probably text myself 30 emails a day or something like that.
oh, that's so cool. So being able to email yourself or message yourself and as you get the ideas. And then what about the process of acting on it? Because you also have had to grow a lot in business. So, like things like trademarking, registering a company, walk people through all of that.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's certainly a lot of fun parts of a business, right? And there's also a lot of like boring sort of stuff you have to do, such as trademarks and making sure you're set up legally, making sure your business structure is set up the right way, taxes, like all that sort of boring stuff. But the reality is, like, at least for me, I figured out like there's the fun part, which is like the getting creative and the growth and all of that. And it kind of balances out with the other stuff. Like that's just kind of like the trade-off for it. But it's also one of the like most important things, I think, and that's where I've seen people in the same space that I've been in and other kids my age, I think, make a lot of mistakes in that area because they disregard it. And I've been very lucky in the sense that like my parents were like big mentors to me when I was first starting, and were like, hey, like you really need to figure this stuff out and set it up right the first time when you're first getting everything set up versus like kind of like doing a half job and like we're all do it later. It's like they're like, no, you need to do it right the first time. You're going to save a lot of time and money down the road. And so for that sense, I'm very thankful that I got that mentorship at a younger age. Because now anytime I go into anything, my first three questions are like, okay, what's the financial structure of this? Is this legal? And like, how can this hurt me in 2 years? So
Mm.
it's just basically always looking at a longer term game versus like kind of how can I make a bunch of cash in a month? Like,
That's huge. And so many people say, like, I was talking to someone yesterday and they're like, well, I don't need to know accounting to start a business. I'll just hire an accountant. But you don't think like that, do you?
well, I it depends. Like, I mean, so like I don't do it my own accounting, right? But I understand how the accounting works, and because of that, I'm able to make decisions based on other parts of my business, knowing how my accounting works, right? Doesn't mean I have to do it, but it means I understand how it works, so I understand the effects it has on the other aspects of my business. Versus me being like, oh, I'll hire an accountant, and then making decisions that could affect the way we're doing accounting without actually knowing that because I just am not sure of how it works. So I don't think you have to know how to do everything. I think you have to understand how everything works. And obviously knowing how to do stuff. Like I know how to do everything in my company, but as soon as I know it, I automate it and pass it off to someone else so that I'm able to move on to the next thing.
So what you're saying is you know the difference between a P&L and a cash flow statement. And
yeah, exactly.
looking back, I mean, you were a millionaire at 16, right? And had this full-on thriving business, Hoop Swag, that you're hiring your friends' moms, your parents came to work with your business. If you could go back and do something differently again, is there something that sticks out with the wisdom you have now?
In
That you
terms of like the way,
anything,
like a different business or something.
just in terms of your business, is there something you would have done, like a lesson perhaps, if you knew then something you know now, would you have done things differently?
That's a
Anything?
that's a really good question. I think the one thing I could have done better, and this is again like I'm everything kind of happens for a reason, right? But like when I got all of this press and all of this started hitting, we were kind of like letting everything kind of trickle into us, and it was doing phenomenal. But I cannot even imagine the amount of how much better I could have done if I had known what I was doing with any sort of advertising strategy at that point. Like we were basically going like blindsided. I mean, we were just like, oh, this whatever happens, happens, right? Like if I had had a lot more strategy around that, I think I would have done a lot, like probably 3 or 4 times better than I did. And what I did was incredible, but it just like, if looking back, like that's the one thing I was like, if I could go back to that one moment, I would have done a lot more with that. But again, I wouldn't be where I am without that. So
That, yeah, and knowing, because when your press hit, it was a bit unexpected, right? Like the way that all went down. So for people who don't know that story, do you want to talk about that?
yeah, so I basically acquired one of my bigger competitors in the space back in like November of 2016, I believe. Um, and it took like 3 to 4 months to do the acquisition and the lawyers and all the paperwork and all that boring stuff. And then we're sitting in like March, and I'm like, okay, wait, I just like acquired this company. And to be quite honest with you, like the acquisition itself was not that big of a deal. Like we were basically paying for artwork. They almost had no sales, but we turned it into a little bit of like a spectacle on the fact that I was like 17 at the time. Yeah, I think it was 17. I forget what the articles say, but no. So we basically started pitching, and again, I didn't even know what PR was. My dad was like, yeah, it might be like a good opportunity to look at potentially doing this. So my eighth grade PE teacher's wife, I just remembered I used to talk to him all the time, and he was like, yeah, my wife does PR. So I texted eighth grade teacher, and I'm like, yo, can I talk to your wife? And so I get on the phone with her, and she's like, yeah, like this could be a potentially really good story. It sounded like right up what her alley was in terms of like what she does for press. And she's like throwing out all these huge names at the time, which were like Forbes and Entrepreneur and Inc. and all these big magazines. And I was kind of sitting there on the phone like, yeah, sure, lady, like, okay. And so she starts pitching, whatever pitching meant. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. But so she starts pitching, and then she comes back in like April, and she's like, yeah, like no one wants to hear your story. She had pitched for a month, and she's like, yeah, sometimes like that's just the way this stuff goes. Like you pitch and no one wants it, and you move on and you try again, and one of these times something will hit. So the next day she emails us, and she's like, wait, I just got an email back from an executive producer at CNN. Like they want to do an exclusive interview. And so I was freaking out a little bit on the inside, extremely nervous. But we do this interview, and then it ended up, they told us they could go on the business section, which anything on CNN, I was like freaking out. But we go on, it's not there. And we're like, okay, great. Like something probably fell through, like stuff falls through all the time in this industry, right? And it wasn't there because it was actually on the front page. So I ended up on the front page of CNN for 3 days. And then what happened is like the local news stations came, and then one of those got pushed out by the Associated Press. So now it's on every local news station. And then we started getting like international requests. We filmed like 2 documentary series, all these inbound requests. And it was insane. Like it kind of hit us by storm. Like I did nothing but like media for like 2 months. Which again, I had never even like been introduced into that world. So I had no idea how it went or anything like that. There was no strategy behind it. It was just like, oh my God, someone else wants to interview me. Great. And so sort of looking at that it was a crazy experience, but there's certainly, looking back, I could have done a lot more if I had been informed to the point where I am today.
Well, when you think about it, like you're 19, you've already gone through an acquisition, 70 employees, multiple 7-figure company, you've been on CNN, and you know, one kind of goes, if someone's listening and they're like 50, they're like, wow, I haven't done any of that. And here you are, right? You've grown a lot as a CEO because you've had to. And what would you say your greatest strength is?
As weird as this might sound, my greatest strength, I think, is honestly building systems around people and processes, because that's sort of what has allowed me to build like a real sort of company out of it versus one of these things that pops up online for a year or two, does kind of well and then gets out. But like building scalable systems and processes around stuff that you can duplicate and other people can start doing. So I'm not involved with everything. One of my bigger weaknesses actually is managing people. Like I'm 19. I don't have a ton of experience in that space. And so I work with people who are older than me, have a lot more experience doing that, to help with that stuff and some of the stuff that just requires like time and expertise in, to be good at. But like for me personally, I think that's honestly my biggest strength, is like building systems around people and systems.
Well, systems, a company can't grow without systems. And that leads me to my next question too. Like for Hoop Swag, what would you see as, you know, that thing that is going to help you really scale your vertical?
Yeah, and so I've been working on this a lot recently. I think what it is so we started doing these dog socks and the customized face socks and stuff. And the software behind that has taken us a year and a half to build because we just kind of slowly built on top of it into what we need it to be. So there's two routes you can take there. One of which is actually licensing that software to other people, which is bizarre that I would ever end up in like selling software from a SOC company, right? But you never know. Those are honestly some of the most interesting stories to me is when companies build internal products for themselves and then that's how they make all their money. Um, but and then also number two, sort of leveraging that because we also have like a 1 day turnaround time, which no one in the US has been able to do yet with the customization aspect. So we've been looking at a lot of doing like celebrity socks. So like you put one face of a celebrity and one face of whoever is uploaded. And or like names customization, like the customization aspect, I think is a lot where we're headed just because that's our advantage and we might as well play to it. So the hoop spike stuff, like I said, it was great for like 4 or 5 years, but like you can't just rely on like a company to just work. You know what I mean? Like you have to keep upping it. Otherwise you're just going to get beat out and no one's going to care. So it's just a matter of always like constantly figuring out, okay, what's new? What can we do? Like, how can we provide a better product and experience for customers? So
Would you, if an acquisition play came along, do you see yourself doing that? Or what would you like going public? What is that big thing for you?
yeah, no, that's a really good question too. And it's interesting because like I've never certainly up until about a year ago, I think like this was my child, right? Like I was so attached to this. I was like, I'm never getting rid of this. And I think I'm finally at the point where like if an acquisition deal made sense and the right partnerships or whatever and everything kind of clicked, like I'd be totally okay selling. It's certainly not something I think is going to go public. Like the reality is it just doesn't have the scale to get there. Um, I mean, maybe the software side of it, but not the socks and that stuff. I don't personally
It's
think
amazing what goes public though. You never know.
that is so true. It's you really don't know. Um, but no, I mean, I'm certainly more open to the idea of an acquisition. I just remember a year ago, I was like, no one's ever going to take this. Like, this is mine. Like, I'm just going to do this forever. So I've become a lot more realistic with that, I think, in terms of like, okay, like maybe we need to come up with some sort of exit strategy, like, or at least have an idea of where we're heading, because it's really hard to grow towards something if there's nothing to grow towards. So
Like Tony Robbins always says, the number one mistake an entrepreneur makes is to not know their exit strategy. And so if Tony Hsieh or Jeff Bezos is listening, Brennan's open to having the conversation. I'll be the internal broker and I'll just say, like, we need a minimum 100-to-1 for the acquisition.
okay.
Well, it makes sense, for Zappos to acquire you.
Oh, totally.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of value in the company because you have patented processes that other people don't have, right? So, the value is so much more than socks. And I think that I love that you're 19 and you're thinking about that, right? Which is huge. Let me ask you this question. Like, you're so wise, you have all this experience. Like, what do you do to get information, knowledge? Do you listen to podcasts? If so, what do you read? What, where do you get the info?
Yeah. So here's my, so the thing is, I really wish I read more. I've tried doing Audible and like audiobooks and like, for whatever reason, most of my like random ideas, cause like, so like I said, I have this whole thing of ideas, right? That I just write down. A lot of them I actually get from exercise, which sounds kind of bizarre, but like, that's my thing. Like I go play soccer or I just go to the gym and work out and like, it's like some sort of like surreal space where like, I'm just kind of like really present, I guess. And I can't really think about anything else. And so I get a lot of ideas then. But in terms of like getting knowledge, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, but not related to anything in specific. Kind of like all over the spectrum. Like when people talk about like going down like the YouTube hole where you end up like somewhere 3 hours later, like it's bad, but like at the same time, it's good. Like some of my best ideas have come from 3 a.m. watching some random YouTube video on a rabbit and how it functions, right? Like it's just, you never know what's going to pop up on that screen and you're going to watch it. So yeah, it's just like a matter of, okay, I could waste a lot of time doing this, but like, what if at the end of all this, like some genius idea clicks in my head? But for me, it's like taking in a wide variety of information. But I certainly do wish I listened to podcasts and read more. Like that's a goal of mine and I'm working on it. But like as of now, I get most of my like stuff from like YouTube and then I'll be like, oh wait, that's cool. And then I'll go research it on Google. So I think I spend, that would be an interesting statistic actually, is how much people Google, how many searches a day or a year or whatever. Because I Google a lot of things. So
You can put a tracker on your
I might have to do
That's it's interesting because sometimes I think when you're working on your business all the time, it's almost like you need to get your head in a different space. And I'm the same way. I'll get an idea when I'm running, or I watch a lot of YouTube videos. So does Tony Shea, by the way, like, on random stuff or whatever. And then I'll get an idea, and I keep mine in a notebook, and I call it my $1 billion notebook. That's where I
Yeah.
put mine. Let me ask you this, like right now, if someone's watching this on YouTube, they're going to see you're in a hallway, and they're probably like, why is he in a hallway? So he's just an FYI, he's at a friend's house, and I was home for the day we're doing the show. I'm home for 24 hours. I was in Tel Aviv, and I'm turning around. I'm going to Canada for like 18 hours, and then I fly to London to speak for 1,000 people.
Wow.
And so it's just like, it's bananas. So we made this all work, but generally you're not in a hallway. So I just wanted to make that clear, like for anyone on YouTube, like what the heck. But let me ask you this. What does your average day look like?
Yeah. So my average day, and I'm sure this is very similar to you, I wish there was a better average day. So when I'm at home, I still actually live at home with my parents, because all of our manufacturing there, and I don't really have a reason to move yet. And because there's some part of me that's like, oh, like personal growth, you want to get out, but at the same time, I'm like, you kind of have to be logical. Like then I'd be buying plane tickets and paying rent in a different city where I'd have to end up coming back home all the time anyways. So eventually I will move out. I just don't know when that is. But my day to day, I usually wake up. If we're just gonna walk through this, I usually wake up at like 5 or 6 a.m. Do some sort of exercise depending on the day, and then I'll usually like eat breakfast and then work for a while. I actually pretty much work all day. When I say work, I mean like I do a lot of work, but again, there's also some like YouTube sprinkled in there, and like I have to lighten the mood up a little bit. And then pretty much every night I end up playing soccer, and then I go to bed. I don't sleep that much. I sleep less than I should. But yeah.
I went through a period where I was like, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
And that was when I was in my 20s. And then by the time I got to my mid 30s, I started to pay for that big time. Like my hormones got totally messed up. Now I'm at last night I went to bed at 7 and I got up at 3 in the morning. So, but
That's not that bad. That's like 7 hours. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm still on like Tel Aviv time, but I want to stay that way because I'm headed to the UK. But I'm like you, like I get up between 4 and 5. I need to work out, but I made myself start to go to bed earlier. Like I had to for self-preservation.
No, I totally, and like that's the one thing that's interesting is like all the people that I like look up to in a sense, that are older than me, they're all like, yeah, like just take care of your body young. Like most people your age are not going to take care of their bodies, but like eat healthy, exercise, and sleep. And like trust me, in 50 years it will pay off, because it's like, but you can't go back and change that stuff. So
No, and here's a fun fact. Our bodies start deteriorating at age 25. We lose a quarter pound to half pound of muscle a year, and the brain starts going at age 35. So that's my little gift to you that, yeah, I start to like get the at least 7 hours of sleep. That's what I want to say. Let me, so there are people listening to this right now. I got this message from one of the fans that she messaged me, and she said, thank you for your show. I'm a nurse. I've been in the process of starting a business, then it was getting really hard. I just started to pull back, and now I'm getting the courage to do it again. What advice would you give to someone who is maybe working full time? They're either starting a side hustle or thinking about it. What do you want to say to that person?
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing you can do is like don't overthink this stuff, right? Like starting a business can sound really intimidating, I think. But when you like really break it down into little pieces, like just find something that provides some sort of value to someone, that they're willing to pay for. And again, that's not going to be an immediate thing. Like you can try a whole bunch of different stuff, but this doesn't mean you need to like quit your full-time job by any means. Like you could do this in an hour to two every night. Just like kind of explore your options, test over and over and over again, until you find something that sort of works, and then slowly build on that, right? So like if you find something that works in a product that people want, or a service, whatever it is, maybe you sell one, or maybe you sell two of them. And then like if there's more demand for it, then you sort of start weighing your options, like, okay, is this something I want to pursue full time? And obviously, like, it depends per situation, right? But I mean, just start small. Like, there's no reason. I see people all the time who are like, oh, I need to go get $3 million in venture funding and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, no, you can prototype something on your own at a very low cost. Like, there's no reason. I just think that, like, in general, the whole business world is very hyped up over, like, you have to raise capital and all this, like, stuff. And at the end of the day, it's very simple. It's a matter of providing value to someone that they're going to pay you for. So.
Mm. And you're so big on testing. You've mentioned that several times. It's this concept of, like, you've tested on Etsy, you do like micro batches and micro testing. And I think that, that can't be underestimated in the power of that, like socializing an idea first, right? Like letting people know, even developing some samples doesn't have to be expensive, but like doing the testing is huge.
Yeah, and it's a trade-off. So for example, like I'm by no means like a technical developer. Like I'm just not. I mean, I know like I can get around in a little bit of like JavaScript and like basic code, but like I basically have built my entire, like, I paid a developer upfront a little bit of money to sort of like code a really basic outline, and I've sort of built on that. And it's a little bit of a slower process, but like I probably saved 20 grand by just Googling crap and figuring it out on my own. And like, again, this is like my personal decision. I would rather move a little bit slower and like save a little bit of capital, because it's a trade-off, right? Like I could have had it done in a week and it's taken me a year and a half, but part of that is like I don't know what I need. And so coding as I go and being able to like add on to that myself, I think it's been huge. But testing, yeah, it's one of those things that like, and I learned this from Facebook ads actually, but it's sort of applied to everything else like company. It's like, reality is you don't know anything about anything. Like the market and numbers and data will decide. And as much as you want to tell yourself like, oh, like this is going to work, like I just have a feeling, right? Like I would want this. It's like, well, no offense, but like it's kind of irrelevant what you want. Like you have to look at numbers and what other people want, because at the end of the day, that's who's paying you money, right? And so finding something that other people want versus trying to sell something that you want to sell is a hard trade-off, because like it's not always necessarily fun, and you might decide that's not what you want to do. But I think you at least have to give that opportunity a little bit of growth, because at the end of the day, like that is what you're going to get paid for. So.
That's huge. And thank you so much for that. Like Googling yourself, learning how to do it. I read about a woman in the UK, and she wanted to put her kids in private school and she couldn't afford it. So she decided to make these like crossbody bags, and she learned how to sew them. Then she went on Google and learned how to code and design her own website to save the money. And and I'm a big believer in capitalizing your own business and like you say, learning how to do stuff. Like right now I've got 3 Udemy classes. There's one on algebra, one on calculus, and one on Python coding on the go. And when I came to work with the AI company Radius, the first thing I did was I enrolled in a class at MIT for 6 weeks, which was intense, but I wanted to be able to sit in meetings and speak the language and know what the heck I was talking about, whether it was like VPUs or CPUs or deep learning, whatever algorithms. And I think that it doesn't matter if you're 19 or I'm 46, like we should always be learning and not ever give away our power in business. We don't have to know how to do everything, but we have to know what to do everything, if this makes sense. Like if you want something built, you speak enough of the language that you're not wasting a bunch of money and time.
Exactly. There's a fine line between like spending too much time, but then also getting enough to where you can effectively communicate what you want done, which is so interesting, because there's people whose full-time jobs are like literally to communicate from like people who know nothing about code but have this idea to like communicate to the developers what they want. And it's like, if you can just cut out that middle person, and this is just one example, but you just cut out that middle person, and all of a sudden you saved yourself a lot of money and time.
Yeah, which is just huge. Well, Brennan, thanks so much for being here from the hallway. I hope you have something fun planned.
Oh, I do. Yeah, no, it's all good.
Well, if you want to find out more about Brennan's company, go to hoopswag.com. And boys and girls, wherever you are in the world, I think we're in 91 countries now, just much love. Go out there and crush your entrepreneurial goals. If you have an idea for a show or you want to be a guest, go to susansly.com. We do vet them all. So there are some certain criteria to be able to come on the show. But again, thanks, Brennan, for being here. You are absolutely awesome. And anyone who's listening to this, if you got a lot of value, Brennan and I would love a 5-star review on iTunes. So don't ask, you don't get.
Totally. Thanks for having me.